It's time for the Bible story, and today we have Lesson 47, Faithful Stephen. And we'll find out who Stephen is in a couple minutes. And the question for today is, why did Stephen bravely tell the enemies about Jesus? So, the disciples, after Jesus rose into the dead, their job was to tell people about Jesus all the time. And so they did that. They helped a lot of people by telling them about Jesus, and then the Holy Spirit worked that faith in their hearts, and then they could go to heaven to be with Jesus, just like we get to go to heaven to be with Jesus. Well, that was very important work, but they also did some work to meet people's needs, like they helped them get enough food, and they helped them get enough clothes, and a place to stay if they needed a place to stay. And so they helped with all those things too. They helped with their physical needs and their spiritual needs, which was a great thing. But after a while, they got so busy that some people thought they left some people out that should have some food or some clothes or a place to live. And so they were so busy that they needed some helpers. So then they got together and they decided, they talked it over, and they thought, we need some more people. So they needed 7 more men to take over the part where they would do the clothes and the food and the shelter. So they picked 7 men, and one of them was named Stephen. And Stephen looked like this. And he was really good about telling people about Jesus too. So when they gave out the food and the clothes and helped them find a place to stay, then they also told them about Jesus, which was a great thing. So they could do things for their body and things for their soul. So while Stephen was doing this, some people didn't like it that he was telling about Jesus. And they thought that, we need to get rid of this guy. What can we do to get rid of him? So they got some witnesses together that said that he said he was God. Do you remember the word for that? Did you say blasphemy? That's the word I was thinking of. Blasphemy is pretending that you are God, saying that you are God and not God as God. And if I would say I'm God, that would be blasphemy, because I wouldn't say that, because I am not God. And Stephen said that too. I didn't say that I'm God. Jesus is God, and God the Father is God, and God the Holy Spirit is God. And so they didn't like it that he kept preaching about Jesus, and so then they took him into the temple to talk to the high priest. And they arrested him, and they thought, maybe we can get rid of him for a while, maybe put him in jail or something. And when he came before the high priest, then he told them, you have been awful to the prophets. All the people who are telling about Jesus, you have been mean to them and not listening to them. And he started way back with Abraham and told them the stories of Abraham and his sons Isaac and Jacob, and how they were taken into captivity in Egypt, and how Joseph helped them, and then how Moses helped them get out of there. And he kept going and told all the stories through when Jesus was. And he said, you killed Jesus. You didn't believe he was God. It's your fault he died. They did not like to hear that. They covered their ears, and they screamed really loud, and they took him outside the city because they were going to hurt him. And so now we need to go outside and get some more different people in the outside picture. Okay, so I have the outside picture again. And so they took him outside the city, and there were many people there, and they were very angry with him. And there was a man there named Saul, and he was kind of in charge of it. And what happened was Sadly, people threw rocks at him. And they kept throwing rocks at him. And they would hit him. And they would hurt him. And they kept throwing rocks at him. And he said, Father, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Sounds kind of like Jesus, right? And he looked up into heaven. And he saw God up there. He saw Jesus. And he said that he was ready to go to heaven. And they kept hitting him with rocks. And he died. It was very sad. But where did he get to go? Heaven. You are right. He went to heaven to be with Jesus. So let's go back to the beginning of the story. The disciples needed some help, didn't they? And they needed some help because besides teaching people about Jesus, they were also helping them get 3 things. Do you remember what those 3 things were? Did you say food, clothes, and shelter? Place to stay? I bet you did. So those were the 3 things they were also helping with. And so then they needed some helpers to do that. And they picked 7 men. And one of them was named Stephen. You're right. And all those men were really good about telling about Jesus, in addition to helping them with their, say it with me, food, clothes, and shelter. And so Stephen was especially good at it, and so they didn't like that. And so what happened was they said, let's see if we can get some witnesses together so that we can arrest him and send him to jail, or maybe even worse. So they did that. They arrested him, and they took him before the church leaders, the high priest. And he told them about Jesus, didn't he? But he started way back in the Old Testament and started with Abraham. And then talked about his sons, Isaac and Jacob. And then about how they went to Egypt and Joseph helped them out there. And then Moses brought them back. And he talked all the way until about who? Jesus. Yes. So, and he said, you killed Jesus. You didn't believe all those prophets. You didn't believe Jesus. You killed him. That made them very, you got it, angry. So they covered their ears and they screamed really loud and they took him outside the city. And this is where this comes. And they started to throw something at him. What did they throw at him? Rocks, you're right. And so he said, Father, forgive them for what they are doing. Just like, who said? Jesus. And when he saw heaven opened, then Jesus took him to heaven to be with him. Wow. Stephen really believed in Jesus enough to even die for him. That was very impressive. Let's see if we can answer the question. It says, why did Stephen bravely tell the enemies about Jesus? What do you think? Why did he do that? You're right. Many people need to know so many people have to know about Jesus. So who helped him tell them about Jesus? You're right. God helped him, because sometimes it's kind of hard to tell about Jesus, but that's our job too. And we'll talk about more about that tomorrow. But today, you just need to know that why Stephen bravely told the enemies about Jesus, because many people need to know, and God helped him. So that's the end of our story for today. So you want to If you want to review the story, you need to look at the lesson sheet that looks like this, and you can review that. And then also, this is the activity that goes with this. This is Stephen, and it says, Stephen's face looked like the face of an angel. His face got really bright because God was helping him when he was telling the chief priests about how awful they were. And then the enemies covered their ears and yelled, remember? And then the enemies threw stones at Stephen until he died. Very sad. That would hurt a lot. And then the believers kept on telling about Jesus wherever they went. So just because they told Stephen he couldn't tell people anymore and they killed him, they didn't kill the rest of the disciples. So all together they worked so that many people could hear about Jesus. And so the Bible verse for this time is, teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. Try to say it with me. We'll say it 2 more times. Teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. Again, teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. Matthew 28, verse 20.